Let's keep it going. There we go. Get a bit of life in it again.
I didn't know how to get to the front. Right. Thank you very much. Wow, that was an amazing talk. Thank you. So now you got to listen to me, fucking old fart, talking about stuff. So there we go. So my talk is like, really, it's important that I want to sort of spread the love of design and the love of craft. So I want to sort of like talk about you, not me. So hello, Wayne Deakin, and get into shit later, but like basically the weird thing is like I feel really at home at Leeds because I'm Australian, but I fell in love with a Yorkshire lass, and that's what kept me here. So South Yorkshire, I don't know if that makes a difference or not, but anyway, whoa, fucking tribal shit. So yeah. Oh, I'll get out. So yeah, but like what was really nice is like I think I have a beautiful partner who comes from South Yorkshire, Sue, who's an artist who also does sculpture and cool shit. Should buy her jewelry, by the way. I'll send you a link. But I think it keeps me real, and I think I always feel at home when I come to Leeds, even though I'm Australian. So I appreciate you having me here and listening to some old fart like me. I am 1,000 years old, literally. I have grey hair. I've worked in loads of great agencies, like being ECD of AKQA, or worked at this place called Apple, which some people know about, and their design shit, and Saatchi's, and George Pat's, which you don't know, but is a big Aussie agency, and Jung von Matt, which is German. So I've traveled all around the world and done lots of stuff. I suppose closer to home, well, London. I've worked for a place for the last 4 years called Wolff Olins. You can blame me for like redesigning that fucking branding of the wonky W, which is like, it wasn't just me, it was co-design of Thomas in the States, but like the W is meant to suggest the sort of the interesting journey you go through with design and creativity, where you start with one thing and then you go through another thing, and through exploration and through sort of different pivots, you get to a different place that's more sort of structured, hence the sans serif. But hey, I've done lots of stuff for like Blank Street and all these cool shit. So yeah, that's good. So I now work. This is day 3 working for a new agencies. So I really fucked up the craft people's sort of social media posts because it said Studio Deakin, and now I've got a new job. So now I work for these 3 agencies, Bray, Leino, Krow Group, and Story. And what's really exciting for me, this is my promotional bit, is that these agencies have regional offices all over the country, from Edinburgh to Newcastle to Leicester to Norwich to London to Devon to Bournemouth to Singapore to Chicago. We don't have one in Leeds, so I need to change that, don't I? But what's really exciting, day 3, is like I'm really excited about the idea of giving and leading this agency into a new future. So you can Google all that shit, or you can use AI. So like I'm not here to talk about me, right? I'm not going to show you cool shit that I've done. That's won awards and stuff. I really want to give something back, because I think it's important when you're 1,000 years old to sort of give some learnings. And when the lovely team from Craft asked me to sort of give a talk, I was like, oh, do I show cool shit? Or do I actually give something that actually could, in this time when AI and people are under pressure, what do you need to make a success? And how do you stay relevant? And how do you, get great work? So I want to do that. But going off on a tangent, when I was like, oh, do I talk about myself? I found this thing about all these sort of like terminologies about how you research yourself online. And I was like, fucking hell, I didn't realize there was a thing called ego surfing. All this other thing down here, algorithmic, I'm not even going to say that, is the practice of understanding how you exist, not just in the minds of people, but in the systems that now shape reality. So I was like, wow, okay. So I just had to have that tangent. Back to reality. Let's talk about you, right? So my topic is about being uncomfortable with being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because I think the really important thing, and what I've learned working for famous names and doing famous work, is that if you just plod along and you actually just sort of take the sort of more comfortable path, it's very career limiting, it's bad for the work, and it's bad for your soul. You know, at the end of the day, you don't want a career that's a Jason recliner, where you just get really comfortable. Because what happens is, you know, you get sucked into a world where you don't progress as an individual, you don't learn, you don't get to challenge yourself. And what's really important is that idea of always wanting to challenge yourself, always wanting to stay ahead of what's going on in the industry and sort of learn from that. And it's an uncomfortable place, because it's really easy to do the comfortable vibes, take the path that everybody goes, yeah, that's cool, amazing, trend, whatever, jump on that, right? It's really hard to do uncomfortable work because it's challenging, not just for you, but it's challenging for other people like your clients and things like that. So what I'd like to talk about is that, and I have sort of like a couple different chapters, as I call them. So chapter 1 is the seduction of belonging, right? The problem with belonging is just like, if you think about this, and this is a weird poster I found from a golf club, right? But like, our industry can sometimes be like a golf club, right? We may not actually have pinstripes and pastels. We might all wear black. But what's really interesting is we spend our years, our time sort of trying to fit into the tribe of agency land. Whether you work in-house, whether you work for an agency of any side, whether you work in brand or something like that, what happens is like you start to sort of get into this ideology that you actually feel like, I need to be part of the tribe. And so I need to dress, I need to act, I need to follow trends that the tribe follows. And the problem with that is it's quite lazy. It makes your work not expansive. It doesn't challenge you, and it's limiting. It might feel like the easiest path to take, but it limits you over time. And I think what I'm trying to say is like, you need to get out of this sort of idea of being scared for all the wrong reasons. You need to start challenging yourself. And like, here's some examples that designers will hopefully appreciate. Gradients. Okay. Woo! Gradient. Yeah, we want a gradient. Amazing. Woo! Apple did it. Whoever did it, right? Let's have a gradient because it's trendy. Okay. Okay. So why if everybody's doing that, don't do a gradient, right? Okay. Color. Woo! Okay. Color of the year is fucking Cloud Dance or something like that. Whatever it's called. What's it? Cloud Dancer. Sorry. And the people from Pantone are going to kill me. But like, you know, again, it's like, just because it's popular doesn't make it right. Just because ink traps were like cool at some stage and slab is whatever. It's like, does that, you know, again, you're fitting into this ideology that sort of, because the group, the tribe, the people out there are seeing that as the sort of trend or the sort of the phase that's cool. Especially, you know, I love clients, but also at the same time, you need to sort of educate them around that. It's like, how do you get out of that? And this is a conversation that I actually made a note of in my notebook where two people were talking about it. It was like, we can make it move, be fluid. Yeah, fluid and flex. Yeah, cool. Yeah, cool. So like motion is a skill and a capability. And I love motion designers, but actually, you can't transpose ideas with just motion. There has to be an idea in there. It's a expression of an idea. motion isn't the idea. And I love motion designers. Please don't throw pints at me later on. But what this leads to is a more of a Lord of the Flies sort of mentality called groupthink, not Love Island, but groupthink island. So, and groupthink is a really interesting way for your brain to think. I'm lucky because I'm a weirdo that sort of has done design and creativity, but I have a master's in semiotics, right? And cognitive science. And that's because I'm autistic. I don't like talking on stage. And I think being neurodiverse, you sort of like look at yourself and you go, okay, why is my brain thinking like this? And I think groupthink is a really powerful force to get you sucked into this world of trends and getting on board with other people's expressions and ways of doing things. But avoid groupthink. Start thinking differently. John Hegarty used to say when people zigzag or whatever it was. But what's really important is you take a path that's unusual. You take a path that's challenging because it's about creating distance from the work and distance from your competition. And that's what AI can't do. And you don't want to be in this world of one of us, right? I don't know if you've ever seen this sort of, I can't remember the name of the film, the guy, the Scissorhands guy, there's a pastel world of everyone mowing their lawn and everything looks exactly the same. This homogeneity that is out there, because the trouble is validation is crack, right? It's a crack whore. So can I say that? Will I be shot? But it is literally like doom scrolling crack whore. So validation is oh yeah, amazing. And what validation does, that algorithm just gets you more and more sucked into sort of following other people's trends and other people's thoughts. That's why going out to galleries, going to live events, seeing artists, working with letterpress people, whatever, it's I think get out of the doom scroll and actually get out in life, and that's the way the work gets more interesting. Because unfortunately, if you're a creative like me, you're super insecure. I feel really insecure. I might have 1,000 awards and whatever, but I go on stage and I go, fuck, anybody going to listen to me? Whatever, and we are insecure because our brain is wired to be detail orientated. Our brain is wired to sort of pick up on the nuances of why is that ear and that type look really interesting? It's fucking stupid, but it's amazing, right? So the micro details are really important for us. And I think we are insecure as people. And that insecurity means it's really easy to lean into a groupthink mentality, So I'm going to give you some advice. The best work of my career never came from being inside the trend. It came from being outside in the room. And obviously I've skipped to chapter 3 here. No, chapter 2, just testing you out. But the outside always wins. And what's really nice, Martin Parr, whoever, I think if you take an outside point of view, you see the world in a different way. And it's really interesting when you start looking at that. How the fuck has Crocs suddenly become a fashion item back in the day? How did New Balance go from dad shoes to sort of super hip, right? How did Steven Spielberg become a fashion icon, right? JFK Jr. is a fashion icon out there for Gen Zs. So it's this is where you need to be. You need to start thinking outside the box. And I think that the important thing is, I use the word cool. I'm not uncool. I am so uncool, it's not funny, But cool is just about timing. Cool is about things aligning at the right time. Celebrate being uncool. Celebrate not fitting into the box. Celebrate being diverse. Celebrate sort of taking different paths. I think the really interesting thing is that cool is predictable, uncool is not, because uncool is ahead of the curve. So what I'm thinking is every time that people say to me, oh, aren't you the guy who was the ECD of AKQA and now you're in advertising? I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah. Because that's somebody else's script. It's not my script. It allows you to flex. Design is a muscle that can move across many industries, sectors, whatever. Creativity is a muscle that can sort of pivot. Don't follow other people's scripts. Don't follow the expected career path. Try and do stuff that's interesting. Go in-house, go out of house, go fucking make your own house, whatever. But basically, I never cared about a label. I never cared about discipline. What I cared about is where is the work most interesting, right? That's the important thing. Where can I make interesting work? Where can I meet cool people to do, or uncool people to do good stuff? And I suppose the challenge is we get sucked into a world of sort of doom scrolling through cool stuff. Actually, I think you need to get out and start taking your own path and looking at things. I'm not going to show you loads of work, but, I've done work from Mercedes Formula One cars that are in museums to fucking, getting someone, Anno for Ubisoft, which is a game, said, yeah, we want a new identity for Ubisoft. And I'm like, yeah, great. We're going to go blacksmith to make the identity, because it was about the craft of making a physical item for a digital game. Whether it's Lloyd's Bank and changing the horse's head, after 250 years, or whether it's writing a line for Jack Daniels that I see in everywhere from Thailand to Taipei, or, Tommy Hilfiger, changed the face of Tommy Hilfiger with G Hadid. It's not about the medium, it's about the thought, and it's about finding stuff from different places and bringing them to a world to solve a problem. And I think what's really interesting is don't be cool, because cool is literally yesterday's news. Cool is sort of it doesn't lead, it follows. And, I was lucky enough to work with these two amazing people, Milton, and Virgil. And Milton and Virgil are uncool names, right? But one of them, Virgil's was the creative director of LVMH and started Off-White and fucking loads of cool shit. Milton Glaser is amazing, did all this amazing identity stuff. This guy was a DJ and architect who fell into design. This guy was an artist and a lettering artist who fell into design. They didn't start out sort of following other people's paths, and yet they've done some of the most iconic work in the world. So for me, it's what they taught me was always the idea of sort of never chasing trends, never chasing sort of different, chasing something that is that actually is chasing work that works for its own reason, rather than trying to create borrowed interest, because that's the biggest challenge that you can give yourself. Is how do I make sure I don't borrow other people's IP, other people's interests? How do I create something that's new, original, and different? And how do I feel about that? Because I'm going to feel really uncomfortable, because it's hard to do that shit. It's easy to borrow trends. It's easy to borrow, other people's interests, but it's hard to create originality. So for me, it's that's my challenge to you if you want to sort of progress through the world. But I think one of the things is stop seeking approval. You don't need everybody's approval. Everybody doesn't need to love you. I don't care if you guys all think I'm a fucking madman talking tonight, right? I think I'm here to sort of try and help and tell people about how to progress their career. You don't need everybody's love. And I'm going to give you really quick, simple ways of how you do that, because I've given you the why you should do that. So how do you enjoy the uncomfortable, right? When you look at stuff that's actually becoming trendy or cool at the moment, whether it's analog work that's becoming cool, or whether it's logos that are becoming interesting, or architecture or type or whatever, how do you do that? 3 simple ways. Insiders optimize, outsiders reframe. You need to sort of create work that actually creates a point of view in the world that has difference to it. Comfort kills craft. The Apple guys, when TBWA, James at Media Lab, who did all this work, if they they could have done this really easily with motion design, right? But they didn't. They shot it with glass panels, and they made this beautiful piece of identity for the Apple through craft, right? Because it was hard, it was difficult, it was interesting, and it made it create distance from their competition. And actually, that was really interesting, because it's what happens with craft today, what happens with AI today is it's a really easy path to sort of go straight to the answer, execute. What's really interesting is when you think about the process as much as the execution. So I would take that on board as a way of sort of creating difference and making your career, your work better. I'd also forget about trends, because trends are gone, right? So don't borrow them. Find your own trends, because what's really important is like you need to find your own voice, and that voice will then become a trend, right? So you don't need to borrow that interest. Stop thinking about that. And in a way, I think, what I'm trying to say is like, have fun, pick up work, try different things. The more you experiment, the more you take that unbeaten path, the more fun you'll have, the better your work will be. And you'll also, financially and mentally feel more fulfilled, basically. And I know it sounds really easy for me to say, but I'm really saying, I wish someone had told me this shit when I started out. I just want to share that with the world in a way. So what's important today is to sort of take that path and try stuff, right? And I know it's easy to say, it's hard to do, but it will make you more relevant in an AI world. It will make you richer. It will give you longevity to your career. So experiment, try, push the boundaries. Ultimately, don't try to be the best insider. Try to be the outsider, right? Be the uncool person. Do the uncool shit and push yourself. That's all I've got to say. Thank you for listening to this crazy old fool talking about stuff. But lots of love to Yorkshire, and thank you for having me.